everyone. Welcome to the Cultivate podcast through the Grove Church. I'm Charlie Lofton, the lead pastor there, and we are now in episode 4 of just kind of working our way, talking about Mormonism. And I have the one and only great and glorious Scott Sutton here with us. Hey, man, good to see you.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me.
And longtime elder at the church, small group leader, just all around great dude. No shoes, bringing the 60s to full-fledged life to the Grove Church every Sunday. And you just spend a lot of time, it's just kind of interacting with Mormons and just kind of have a heart for this. And so we spent a lot of time, if it's your first time catching us, go back 3 episodes, spend a lot of time rehearsing kind of some of the theology of Mormons, the history of Mormons, and just really under the idea of we want to fully understand it and really fully understand this is not a Christian religion. It's not a Christian denomination. This is its own thing. And in fact, there are quite a few things in there that I would say are offensive in what they say about God, and a lot of harmful theology in really understanding what Jesus did. So I encourage you, if you haven't, to go back and listen to those and kind of build up your understanding and knowledge of who this group is and what they believe. But I want to kind of wrap up this series here with this of like just kind of really thinking through big picture, the question of, well, what do I do if they come knocking on my door? What do I do if I've got extended family that's Mormon? I've got friends, coworkers, and because sometimes they can be, for lack of a better word, aggressive in trying to convert or try to get you to become Mormon. And like, I don't know, how do I engage? Do I let the Mormons in? Am I supposed to have these missionaries come? Right? And some people will say that that's dangerous. Like, there's all sorts of different opinions about this. And so this is kind of what I want us to try to, in what can probably only be described as a Charlie ADHD kind of way with you, right? But let's start here with this. You've said last, as we've been talking, that this has been something that has been a part of your story for the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. Why don't you tell me your origin story then? What happened 20-ish years ago?
Yeah. So my, in the year 2000, I was living in Houston at the time, and a temple had opened up in Houston, and they were doing this kind of 2-week visitation open to the public period. And a friend of mine happened to live in one of the neighborhoods that surrounded it. And so we went together. And so that was I had no concept of any of this before I did that. But walking through that temple, kind of doing the tour, you see things, and it starts to kind of pique your curiosity about, gosh, this is a whole nother, because you'll see things about like the baptismal font they use for baptizing for the dead. You'll see the room where they do marriages, where they have mirrors that kind of face each other to represent this eternity of marriage and family and kind of the progression that you have. You'll see the room that's kind of this meditation room. It's called the celestial room, where they have this beautiful chandelier and all like beautiful carpet and drapes and just as beautiful. So you see all this and you're like, I have no, like, where does this even fit? And so didn't really do much with that. But when we moved here I think of that as like the first time that God was kind of just working on my heart a little bit around this. We moved to Arkansas, and day one, my closest coworker, and the spot that I was backfilling from a coworker who moved to another position, they were both Mormon. And so day one, and might have just had some of the most fun people, that was around the time Napoleon Dynamite came out. And one of the guys, we would just quote Napoleon Dynamite to each other every day. Was Napoleon, was that Montana or was that Utah? That was Idaho.
It was Idaho.
It was right across the border.
Okay, yeah. So do we think Napoleon and his family, do we think they were Mormons?
I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely.
But percentage-wise.
Statistically, it's likely. Yeah, that's
okay.
right. Yeah.
Okay, anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So, and then there are a lot of little, some Mormons who grew up in that culture have definitely I think they can laugh at it a lot harder than us, because they do see some of these cultural nuances that none of us would ever pick up on. So I think they did a pretty brilliant job with that movie. But, but that was the nature of this. So we would quote comedians together. We would, just beautiful people. But sure enough, they found out where I lived and sent missionaries to my door within a month of me starting at the job. That, they knocked on my door and said, hey, we're talking to so-and-so. And they mentioned that you might be interested in the church.
So they sent missionaries to your house, but the missionaries told you. It wasn't like, hey, why don't you go happen to knock on this dude's door? Yeah. Like, hey, we were talking, we found out about you from this guy, said you were great. Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
It was a little less creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. And my initial was like, sure, let's come on in. And just my own context, I grew up atheist. I grew up with no church background at all. And it wasn't until discovering Christ that I walked out of that fully. And so, and there's a whole journey on that. But I still have this openness to, if someone comes to me with a truth claim, I want to hear the claim. Like if I'm missing truth, if this is the restored gospel, I want to hear it. And so that's how I came into this.
So you would say that you came into it with an openness to, maybe there's something I've missed, and they have a decoder ring or a missing piece of the puzzle. So you weren't talking to them. You weren't getting ready to fight.
No, not at all. And neither was I getting ready to convert. I mean, I at that point, God had impressed the realness of my relationship with him on me so much that there wasn't, I was drinking from the fountain that was quenching my endless thirst. And so there was no sense of like, okay, well, this isn't doing it for me. What else is out there? But it really just more this, someone's coming with a truth claim. Let's hear it. Let's test, the earth is flat. Let's look at the science, I want to hear it. And so we met for a number of times. So typically when missionaries come to your door, they have like a 6-lesson progression they take you through, and they'll spread that out over 6 weeks. And each lesson kind of focuses on a different topic. And each one also kind of leaves you, they ask you to make some sort of a commitment. And the idea is like the first commitment might be, would you read the Bible, or would you read this passage from the Book of Mormon? And then week 2, if you read it, then it's like, okay, they're willing to make some steps. And so next one might be, will you come to church with us? Next one might be, and so they'll kind of keep stepping through all the way to the point where, will you get baptized? And so they're really kind of leading you. Well, we met for 2 years solid. So we blew through the 6 months.
You weren't making the commitments.
Yeah. So like I came to church, then did the baptism, but came to church. But it was like, they're beautiful people. And so like to be able to sit and talk with someone who I could tell at this point was believing something that didn't really align with the reality, but we're willing to talk about it. We're beautiful people. I mean, we celebrated their birthdays with them, cause they're out. And then, to your question about when they come knock on my door, even if you have no intention of engaging them on a theological, offer them a drink. They are 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds who are away from their family, sometimes for the first time ever in their lives. Missions can be hard. It's long hours. There are high expectations. In this part of the country, they're not getting a lot of baptisms. And so that's very difficult, even for Christians going on missions to parts of the world that aren't receptive to Christianity. It's just a very emotionally, physically, spiritually draining experience for them. And so offer them a drink, invite them in, have a drink, sit down, hear their story, and wish them well, and tell them if they're ever in the neighborhood again and they're thirsty, they can always knock on your door and get a drink of water. I would say that is like bare minimum if we want to think about as our response as Christians, what we could be doing with them. But if you do want to engage with them, there are definitely resources. It's the age of the internet. There are plenty of resources out there. But we met for 2 years, and during that time, like I met a lot of different members of the church who lived in my neighborhood, surrounding neighborhoods, and a lot of them work at the place where I work. And so I'm to the point now where some people that I love dearly, people who, some neighbors who threw a baby shower for our second-born members of the church, like there are people that I genuinely love, and I have a friendship with them and a love for them that has no agenda or no hidden ulterior motive. It's just a genuine friendship, full stop. At the same time, feeling the weight of the struggle is something that keeps me engaged with this, because seeing families be sometimes split apart because of this, because one spouse wants to join, one doesn't, one leaves the church, and sometimes that results in divorce, because marriage is one of those requirements for this eternal God statehood.
Right.
And if you're not believing anymore, then now my eternity's at stake. So that can be really hard. So you see what this does to families. You see the load that members have to carry, and that's what keeps me engaged with this. And so over the years, anytime missionaries have knocked on our door, we've invited them in, offer them water, talk with them, and we're always very upfront with them about what we believe. We ask the hard questions, but knowing that what that they're just beautiful human beings who can be amazing friends is reason enough to welcome them in.
Oh, that's really cool. So when you're engaging them on a friend, just act of kindness kind of way. Hey, come on in. I want to show you some kindness. I want to show you some respect. I want to acknowledge your dignity and worth and value as human, because very often, certainly at least in the South and probably in other places as well, you see them on their bikes and they're very obvious, mm-hmm. right? Bikes, backpacks, white shirts and ties,
yep.
right? I mean, their name tags, elder so-and-so.
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's plenty of stories out there of people intentionally doing them harm or pranking them. I'll try to run them off the road. I'm just back and splash them. I'm going to throw something at them, right? I mean, so at a minimum, you're definitely encouraged. We can do a whole lot better than that to not reinforce in them some sort of, persecution complex for them, but can just genuinely show them a measure of kindness.
Yeah.
So would you say it is dangerous to invite Mormon missionaries into your home after they knock on your door? Is it dangerous?
Yeah. So from a physical safety standpoint,
I don't mean physical. Okay, I don't mean physical. I mean spiritually. Is it? Am I inviting not a physical, but a spiritual wolf into my home?
Yeah. So I'd say if you are at a point, because we're all at different parts of our journey. Sometimes we find ourselves further back in our journey than we were 3 years ago. We're all on a journey, and if you're in a place in your journey where you are just feeling very vulnerable, they will come in and they are there for a purpose. They are there to get you baptized. They're not there for water. They're not there to rake your leaves for you. They are there to get you baptized. That is their sole purpose of being there. And so they will, over the course of that 6 weeks period, be pressuring you to make these commitments. They'll be causing you to question things you believe. And if you're at a place where that's not safe for you spiritually, I'd say offer them the drink of water, thank them for their time, and send them on their way. Tell them they can always come back for another drink. But if you're at a place where you feel like you're ready to engage, I wouldn't do it foolishly because it is a time investment, but take the time to talk to them, understand where they're coming from. Don't just take it from two guys on a podcast, but actually understand from their own mouth, what do they believe? Why do they believe it? What does it mean to them? Ask them the hard questions, challenge them with scripture, and tell them your own story. And so I answer that question kind of out of both sides of my mouth, that I think there are times where
it depends.
It depends. There are times where I would say, even in hectic family life, there are seasons we've had where it's just, there's too much going on to give up another hour every week I'm sorry, we can't. And so I just say, know where you're at with this. And also I think we're all called, that God pricks our hearts for different groups of people. And if your heart isn't pricked for this group of people, then offer them the water, love on them, and tell them to come back anytime they're thirsty. So
I think the word that I would use, and I intentionally used a stronger word using the word dangerous. I think the word I would use is risky.
Mm-hmm.
It's not without its risks. And I think for two particular groups of people, historically, I've noticed it be risky for, and the one you've mentioned, which is someone who is just spiritually vulnerable, because their tactics are well rehearsed, well practiced, they're well equipped. And I would really say that the people that are, quote, converting, they're not taking people from atheist to Mormon.
Right.
They're taking disillusioned Christian, the disillusioned, hurting, broken Christian who is vulnerable for whatever reason, because of some sort of life change, because of some theological crisis. And so I think it is it can be very risky for that person. And I think it's also risky for maybe even like not the opposite, but a very different sort of person, the person who maybe can be really obsessive and has a great need to be right, and really gets angry listening to someone be wrong. And so they're coming at you with their stuff, and you push back on them, and they've got an answer. But they're every answer to every question and counterpoint, they just keep being more wrong.
Yeah. Riles you up.
And you've got to figure out, and you're going to do more research, and I'm going to think about this some more, and I'm going to come up with some great thing to show you how wrong you are. And it can become an earworm of sorts for you. And I've also discovered you're not going to win a game of endurance with them.
Right. I
mean, you said you're 2 years in, at one point you were 2 years into your 6-week program. You didn't win.
Right.
But they didn't give up.
Right.
No one won. And so I think it can be dangerous in that regard too, because I've seen people with I would have said it, I thought at the time, had a really strong Christian faith, decide it was their mission to, again, this is too strong of a phrase, but Mormon hunting, right? I mean, of just like, I'm going to go out and convince Mormons that they are, and it became an obsession for them.
Yeah.
And
right.
they became Mormons.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, I think that's spot on too, that anytime, whether it's Mormon or not, like something becomes that much of an obsession for us, then we need to check even our own hearts about what are we actually trying, like, are we trying to win the argument for ourselves, for our own glory, for our own ego, so to speak, or are we genuinely approaching this from the place of love and truth? And so I think if spiritual vulnerable, obsessive, and just coming to it from the perspective of the ultimate heart change won't come because I said the zinger that zinged him so good.
A zinger that no one Mormon has ever heard before.
Right. And so it comes from the work of the Spirit and their response to that on their heart. And so we can be vessels that help with that, but it's not our job, our duty to zing them, the best that they've ever been zinged. And so I think that's part of it too, is just checking our own hearts with why are we even inviting them in? And I think that if we're inviting them in because we're really disillusioned with the current state of things, I think that's a warning to us. If we're inviting them in because, boy, these two boys are gonna be in church with me by the end of this week.
Right. That's
a heart check too, because that's not coming from a place of love. And so I think you raised a really good point there.
So it just came into my brain the scene from The Princess Bride where Vicini is talking to the man in black and it's like, that there's the first classic blunder is never get into a land war in Asia. The second less popular one is never get into a battle of wits with a Sicilian when death is on the line. Right. So
amazing.
There's a sense in which I think about, I say this to people too. Like, you don't want to get in an argument with me.
Yeah.
And it's not because I'm always right. It's just
incorrigible.
I'm classically trained in talking.
Yeah.
I have been talking and arguing my whole life. It is my job to make great arguments, to break things down. I've thought about this, whatever it is we're arguing about, probably. Like, I've probably thought about it more than you have. It's not that I'm right. It's just that I'm better at arguing.
Yeah.
On a lot of topics, not all of them, but on a lot of them. You don't want to get an argument with me. Like, I don't, and I'm not trying to get into an argument. Anyways, distracted. Same thing here. They have been trained for months, and some of them have maybe a year plus experience in having these sorts of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
If your goal is to get into an argument, if your goal is to win a conversation, you won't.
Yeah.
They will win the argument.
Yep.
You will win an argument. So I've found more than anything, and again, I've limited experience with some missionaries, a lot of good conversations with some kids at Chick-fil-A back in the day. I have found, and what you think about this, is that question asking about what they believe is better than other stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to make an argument. Just even some of the stuff we've talked about over here. So, is there a God of gods? And let them in their fumbling around of that question, kind of, if God wants to do something there, he can.
Yeah.
So God was just like me. So the God that I worship was a human on another planet. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And just really good exploratory questions that, for lack of a better phrase, can bring up some of the absurdity, or really maybe some of the more, to use a harsher word, some of the more blasphemous things, and just if the Spirit wants to come in and do a work as they're thinking about their question, but they may be in full argument mode,
mm-hmm.
and they're not allowing their spirit to engage, then okay.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to fight anybody.
No, I think that's spot on. Just asking questions. And I think as a side note, I think that's a good way for ourselves too, to kind of weed out a lot of things that we believe that are maybe just a little bit off kilter, just really questioning ourselves too. But I think to your point about engaging in those conversations, and I'd add one other thing to that, is that question asking, I think that's spot on. The other thing that I think is really meaningful is authenticity. When your religion is based on attaining a level of perfection, of human perfection, and or in this peer pressure environment to do that, your community tends to be people who are all trying to not show any cracks. Or if they do show cracks, it's in very specific ways.
Mm-hmm.
And as followers of Christ, we have the ability to show all the cracks. And so the one time I ever saw those missionaries ever kind of soften to the idea of our gospel was bringing them to our small group, which, I'm not saying everyone go invite missionaries to your small group, but we had been meeting, we were talking about the Grove and, small group, and hey, we'd love to check it out sometime. And which I probably should not have done, but they came with us on a Wednesday night, and it just happened to be, and this was a group that was just all of our craps on the table, just is all out there. We had some people, some of them, some of them are even like predate you a little bit, but the people who will just say anything, have no shame because they are confident in the work that Christ has done in them and don't feel this need to show the work that they've done. And through the whole call, we're studying the Sermon on the Mount, kind of where Jesus is kind of stepping up this, you've heard it told, but I tell you, you've heard it told, but I tell you. And it's just showing that we have utter dependency on the work of God, the work of Christ, right, to fulfill that. And talking about our own struggles with that, our own struggles with anger, our own struggles with lust, our own struggles with all the things like Jesus calls out point blank. And on the drive home with them, they were just, it was the quietest they'd ever been. And they were just, that was very cool. And so I think there's asking questions, being authentic, and just modeling what life looks like when all of my trust and my faith and my certainty is in Christ and what Christ has done. Then I'm free now to love, to be myself, and to worship the God who has done all.
Right. That's really good. So, bringing in a missionary, has its risks, and I feel like God has uniquely called you to kind of engage at a next level, and I really admire and appreciate that. And so, like I said, we can all give them a drink. We can all be kind. We can all do that. Some of us may want to talk to them at this level. Some of us may be able to go to a different level, right? But what about beyond that? What about for the people that maybe have people who are part of the Mormon church in their
mm-hmm.
neighborhood or that they work with, and it's not really an optional relationship for them? What's the right way to engage? Am I supposed to be recruiting them? Am I supposed to be trying to convert? Am I just trying to be friends with them? Is it being cowardly to just be friends with them and I'm not being committed enough? Mm-hmm. Or is it like, man, you stop, you need to think about it in those terms, just be a good friend. That's what you're like. What advice would you give to someone who has these sorts of relationships with people who are part of the Mormon church? Yeah,
no, I think that's good. Another good kind of subset of people in our lives. And, I think about Peter saying always be prepared to give an answer. And I feel like when it's not optional, I think we are called to maybe this next level of really understanding the world they're in, their beliefs, their struggles, their theology, and getting ourselves to a point where we are always prepared to have an answer, because there could be 20 years that go by where there's never a need or an opportunity to ever say anything to you. And then one day at dinner, you have them over for dinner and they say, actually, we're really struggling. We're really thinking about leaving the church right now because we see this, and, or whatever it might be. And, I use that. I've actually held on to that passage for a lot of different reasons that, with coworkers going to get drinks after work, and there's something on the TV about, some other church abuse scandal. And they turn to you and they say, how do you believe this crap? And you have to be ready 2 beers in to give an answer for why you believe this crap. And
did you just say 2 beers in?
Not on the Grove podcast. I didn't.
Indeed, you didn't.
But you have to be ready, always be prepared to give an answer. And so I feel like that applies here too, that if you have someone in your life who's close enough that that it feels inevitable, this is going to come up.
Right.
Be prepared and don't feel the pressure, know every single thing, answer every single question, but to immerse yourself in it enough that when that time comes, if that time comes, you have an answer, and then you have the stuff in your mind that the Spirit can organize into something that's really meaningful for them to hear.
That's really good. I think the last piece of advice that I would want to give people is to, if you are going to engage in conversation, let it be about the things that you and I were talking about in the first 2.5 episodes. Mm-hmm. the things about Jesus, the things about people, the thing about the very nature and majesty and glory of God, about grace, about forgiveness, about salvation, about being dead in our sins, those kind of major theological things, because that's where the conversation needs to happen. And it gets to the heart of it, and it gets you thinking about the things that matter most to the gospel, and it's helping them to think. And again, if the Spirit's going to do a work, he's going to do it on the issue of the very nature and character of God, the nature of Jesus, and the real need that they have for forgiveness. It's not going to be because you said things like, I hear Joseph Smith was illiterate.
Yeah.
I hear he was a murderer. Joseph Smith was a murderer. Yeah, you got your magic underwear on right now.
Not going to help.
That's just, I can't believe you think Garden of Eden is in Missouri, bro.
Right.
Like, how stupid are you? Okay, maybe those in your worldview, that those things are just next level preposterous.
Mm-hmm.
The reality of it is, I think if a fish ate a dude and spit him back up, and
right.
I think Jesus died and came back to life, and
preposterous.
I there's plenty of preposterous things that I believe. Let's spend our energy on the preposterous things that we believe or don't believe that are critical to the very nature of the gospel.
Amen.
I believe that the death of Jesus Christ allows me to be in an eternal relationship with an all-powerful eternal God. That's different than what I hear you're saying. Like, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
And because again, it's because we think that we're winning an argument, and really you're just insulting a human.
Exactly.
Who is in desperate need, who is running, who is a, this is an insulting metaphor, who is a hamster on a wheel, running as fast as they can, working as hard as they can, in theory to make some great progress, but aren't going anywhere because it's not something that they can do. And it's not something that a weak former human God could, none of the problems we have could be solved by an elevated human.
Yeah.
And they need that. And either you can engage them on that level or you can't. So if you're going to get stuck, if you're vulnerable, or if all you really can do is mock them
mm-hmm.
for weird beliefs, then stay out the game.
Yeah, absolutely. They have the same longing for the divine that we have. They're just finding it in a different place, and focus on that longing and not the peripheral. I think that's well put.
Oh. Well, Scott, again, I can't say enough. I sent you a text. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, and to record 3 episodes with me. And we've vastly changed the outline of those 3 episodes and expanded them to 4. I appreciate your flexibility,
Thank you.
Your kindness, your empathy, and your love for people, and your just incredible wisdom. So thanks for just spending some time with us over these last few episodes.
It's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate your heart too.
For sure. And thanks to all you guys who've been listening. And if you have any questions or thoughts, we'd love to hear about them. Best place to do it is go to thegrovechurch.org/connect. You can fill out the form there. Drop your question, and we'd love to connect with you. And that's the best way to do it too. You can find all the information there online about who we are as a church, the best way to connect with us on Sunday morning, either in person or online, depending on where you live and kind of where you're at right now. So we would love to be able to serve you, help you any way that we can. And again, I'm Charlie Lofton, lead pastor. Got Scott Sutton here, one of the elders, and thanks so much for joining us.